Hello, I'm James Clark from the Department of Physiology at King's College London, and in this brief tutorial I'm going to go through the steps that you'll need to follow in order to give a lecture and deliver teaching using Microsoft Teams. In our previous tutorial we showed you the steps required to set up a Microsoft Teams appointment with your students or staff colleagues. Now at the time of the lecture you can click on the Outlook appointment you made previously and click on the Join Teams Meeting. Different browsers may come up with different messages, but my browser is asking me if I want to open this page in Microsoft Teams. That's because the URL, the link to the Microsoft Teams event, is automatically associated with the Microsoft Teams app. If you've not installed Microsoft Teams on your computer, you will either need to do so using a King's SOE computer through the Software Center, although most King's SOE computers will have this installed automatically, or if you're using your personal computer, you'll need to download the operating system specific version of Microsoft Teams for your Mac or your PC. Once it is installed, it'll open up Microsoft Teams when you click on this button. Upon allowing your computer to open Microsoft Teams will spring into action, and you should see the information on the screen that I can see in front of me. The name of your lecture will appear at the top of the page, underneath which will appear your login specific avatar. Underneath this you have the option to join the lecture. However, before you do this, you may want to confirm a few settings. For instance, you want to see if you want to turn your video on, you can click on this. This will turn on your webcam if it's connected to your computer. Once your webcam is on, you can choose whether you want to blur the background of your video for privacy. In most cases, you'll want to leave your microphone turned on, but maybe when you're setting up your lecture, you might want to choose to mute your microphone, and you can do this by clicking on this little icon. If you click on Custom Setup, you can choose exactly which peripherals you're going to use to present your lecture. For instance, if you've got multiple microphones, speakers or cameras connected to your computer, you can select the correct ones here. Once you're ready to go, click on Join Now. Of course, without any students present, you are waiting on your own. However, as others log in, you'll notice they appear in the list of participants, which you can access by clicking on the Show Participants list. Remember that Microsoft Teams only allows 250 attendees to any meeting. As the students register, you might want to remind them to mute their microphones and perhaps turn off their videos. It's a waste of bandwidth having lots of video streams running concurrently. When you move your mouse on the Microsoft Teams page, this little window will appear. Icons running from left to right are the time of the lecture, whether your camera is turned on or off, whether your microphone is muted or not, a share button which allows you to share your screen or any files with your students, and we'll come back to that in a minute. The three little dots are the More Actions dots, and they give you a host of different functions that you can do, including accessing your device settings, your cameras, your microphones and your speakers, meeting notes, the option to enter full screen, starting your video with blur for privacy, turning on or off the live captions. These are quite handy, they often work quite effectively while you're giving the lecture, and closed captions will appear on the bottom of the screen as you present your slides, for instance. You can turn on or off a keypad, start recording, and turn off all incoming video. So for instance, if some of your students have forgotten to perhaps turn off their cameras, you can turn them off remotely here so they don't disturb you. Next to the More Actions button is the Show Conversation button. By clicking on this, and if your students click on this, they will be able to see any chat that is taking place within the group. You may want to ask students to ask questions using this meeting chat window. And as before, we have our Show Participants button. If you or any of your students or colleagues click on the Hang Up button, they will leave the meeting. The meeting will not close because any other attendees still in the meeting will remain in the meeting, but you can rejoin the meeting by clicking back on the link should you accidentally hang up. So before we want to start giving this lecture, and once you've introduced everything to the students, you'll probably want to share with the students either a slideshow or PowerPoint files, a PDF, Word, or whatever you want to do in your tutorial or lecture. By clicking on the Share button, you have a host of options, including sharing desktops. I've got 2 screens attached to my Mac, and I can choose screen 1 or screen 2. And if I click on either of these buttons, it'll automatically share either of the screens directly with the students who are in attendance in the meeting. I can choose to only share windows. So for instance, here I've got Safari open, and I can just choose to share my Safari window. In other words, I can go on the internet and describe various procedures with my students. Or any other program that is open, for instance Microsoft Word or Microsoft PowerPoint, you can share directly the application with your students and maybe talk through use of that program or the presentation you're giving. In most cases, you want to deliver a PowerPoint presentation. The PowerPoint presentations that are delivered through Microsoft Teams run essentially PowerPoint in the background, so most functionality of PowerPoint is able to be used. For instance, if you use Poll Everywhere or any interactive system, when you run a slideshow through Microsoft PowerPoint within Teams, it would work fine. So for instance, I'm going to click on this one here. Depending on the size and the location of your file, it may take some time to load. I do recommend that you keep your files actually on your local computer and don't attempt to deliver them from a USB stick or a network drive, as this might take considerably longer to load and present. Once your slides have loaded, you can easily scroll through them just like you would do in PowerPoint using your mouse buttons, cursor, or whatever. At this point, you may want to start recording your lecture. To record your lecture, click on More Actions and click on the Start Recording button. If you wait a few seconds, you should then see a message appearing on the top of the screen that is saying, "You're recording." And it is worth at this point letting all of your students or colleagues know that this is actually being recorded. You can then dismiss this. It's worth noting, through experience, that if a student or a colleague still has their microphone active at this point, anything they say or do will also be recorded as part of this live stream. So it's worth reiterating at this point to ask students to turn off their cameras and audio unless it is necessary that they are working in a two-way communication system, if it's a tutorial, for instance. At any point, if you move your mouse over the lower half of the window, you will notice that these icons appear again, and at this point you can turn on or off your camera, microphone, etc. You'll notice the record icon now appears, and if I choose to turn on closed captions, you will also see that the closed caption icon appears. And if the system is working properly, closed captions should then appear on the bottom of the screen. Sometimes this can take a few minutes to start working, and you may not find it works every time for you live, but it's worth a try since it does help with accessibility problems. It's worth reminding students that if they wish to see the conversation during your presentation, they will need to click on their individual Show Conversation icons on their own computers. You do not have control over your students' view. So for the purposes of giving a lecture, at this point you may want to hide the conversation and hide the participant list and just carry on with your presentation. So for instance, I can scroll through these slides and give this presentation. And if I've now finished my presentation, I might want to click on the Show Conversation button and open up these slides for questions. Once you've finished your lecture, you can click on More Actions and stop the recording. You'll need to confirm you want to stop the recording, and anything that is said or done beyond this point will not be recording, and a message will appear in the meeting chat to say that this meeting has stopped recording and it is starting to save. At the end of the lecture, you can simply hang up, you leave the meeting, and you return to the chat window from the lecture you have just given, so you will have a record of any questions that students have raised or any comments that have been made. Equally, you will see a copy of the recording you have made. This recording may take some time to generate. Bear in mind that quite a lot of people may be using this service at the moment, but the recording has been saved to the Microsoft Stream service and will be available to you shortly. Once you've finished your lecture, you can close down Microsoft Teams, close any windows that you're waiting, and simply wait now for the email to arrive from Microsoft Streams. This will allow you to then share the video that you've just recorded with your students either through Keats or via email, but we'll cover that in the next tutorial.